You're still watching iBrand Daybreak. Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, says the federal government is by no means overwhelmed, but rising to the security challenges facing the country. Quote, our military are doing their best and the government is by no means overwhelmed, end of quote, the minister said during the live television program on Monday in Lagos State. Lai Mohammed said that the nation must not give in to terrorism and banditry, adding that terrorists are enemies of Nigeria. And now joining us to discuss this, we have Femi Johnson Ayodele, in-house analyst in the studio. Good morning, Femi Johnson. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Margaret. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure having you on board.
Glad to be here.
Let's take it on. What do you make of his statement?
Why are you laughing? It's quite funny, right?
It's funny, you know, but I want to hear from him, really.
Well, I understand Lai Mohammed, and we must ask ourselves the question, who is Lai Mohammed? Is the Minister for Information. You must understand that he's employed to do this. He's doing his job as the image maker of the government or this administration, as a spokesperson of this administration, as the PR person of this administration. So he's expected to do this. Because he's trying to manage the situation, you don't expect that he will come up with the same position Adeboye has come up with, or that of Paul Adefarasin, or that of Sheikh and others. But you must understand that the reality is these guys are making political statements. The statement they are making is different from what an average Nigerian faces every day. And look at it, I must tell you, if you're someone who claims to love Nigeria, you're someone who claims to be a patriotic Nigerian, you'll be worried. It calls for concern. The state of insecurity in Nigeria, the security challenges we've been having in the last 1-2 years calls for serious concern. Now, it's assuming a very dangerous dimension, and that's why you have people who have not been speaking before now speaking up. You have Paul Adefarasin before now has just been doing his normal stuff as a pastor or the lead pastor of his church. You have Adeboye, who is like an elder statesman and who for a while has been quiet but decided to speak. And for this set of people to have chosen to speak at this time, that's to tell you it is not business as usual. It is no longer a tea party. What we have now is worrisome, is troubling, is mind-boggling. Look at what happened to Sheikh just because he spoke up, you know, and that's one of the challenges we are having with the handlers of our security issue or this administration. When you have someone who gives you a kind of positive criticism, they are not open to criticism. This is someone who is pointing out a situation which every Nigerian can relate with. If you live in where I live, if you stay where I stay, then you can relate with what he's talking about. Last week I was in Abuja when the bombing happened, and I knew what actually took place. In fact, some of the people who were speaking with some of the victims or some of those who escaped the attack, they were talking about the experience they have every day while going to work. Some of them live in Abuja and they have to travel by train to Kaduna. You understand? So if you experience that every day, then you can't be talking the same way Lai Mohammed is talking. Sometimes it seems to me that these people are detached from the reality. But I understand because they are on the other side. When you're on the other side, you see things differently and you say things differently. But when on the side of the masses, like you and I, you know, we see things differently. So I'm not surprised he's saying this, but the reality is we are battling with security issues more than ever.
Well, as an information minister, it's one of his duties is to disperse information, credible information, and not misinform the public. So in the case where you come up to say that the government, the security agencies are not overwhelmed, and then you grant an interview and you're talking about the infrastructure that the government has achieved in area of aviation, agriculture, infrastructure, among others, saying that a lot of Nigerian youth, 4 million Nigerians have benefited from the National Social Investment Program. Now we're looking at how true are these figures. It's one thing to want to, of course, to be loyal to your bosses, another thing to be credible in your office. So are we looking at credibility or loyalty in the terms of who he's working for or the image he has to portray, even though those images may not even be the correct image? Nigerians deserve the truth, don't you think so?
We're talking about security or insecurity here, which Nigerians have the right to know whatever the government is doing in that regard to solve the problem. Lives are threatened, and when your life is at stake, whatever grammar you are putting out there doesn't matter. What I expected from Lai Mohammed or any political office holder is to take advantage of situation like this to lay out your scorecards, what you're doing as regards security in terms of equipment, you know. The major problem we have now is we don't have a clear-cut policy or in terms of security, the architectural policy that could even take us to the next level. We're still doing the normal thing. I will give you an example. If you look at our police first, as we speak now, we have less than 300,000 policemen in Nigeria, policing about 200 million people, or over 200 million people. How will you relate that? You're talking about insurgency. Look at what happened recently. And if you discover, we used to have this kind of attacks in the northeast, but due to the presence of military activities, now they shifted their base to the north central and the northwest, which calls for concern because that is closer to the center, which is where the seat of government is. And what does that suggest to you? That even these terrorists, whether you call them bandits, you call them gunmen, whatever name you give to them, they are all terrorists. And the earlier we see them as terrorists, the better for us, because these are enemies who are bent on creating chaos in the state. And as long as we are giving them names, bandits, we still see them as militarized civilians rather than seeing them as terrorists. So I suppose that there should be a state of emergency when it comes to insecurity in Nigeria, because that gives the military to be able to pull all their arsenal, all the weapons they have in their armory, whatever they have, to ensure they tackle it. But what we're having now, we're still looking at, okay, almost like lack of leadership and the political will to do the right thing. I give you an example. To be a leader means you do the right thing at the right time. Even when it is odd, you do the right. Look at what is happening in Ukraine. You have a president who was formerly a comedian. Nobody had told that kind of human being, that kind of background could put up that kind of stunt at this time. But he stood for his country, and he still stands for his country. He was there. Even when America offered to evacuate him, he said, no, 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 I don't need a ride. I needed weapon. He stood in that country. He's still there as we speak. That's what we call leadership. So we have a president who is a former general, or has a military background, and you can't blame Nigeria if they're expecting much from that kind of human being. You have someone who's a former comedian, and he has turned himself to a hero just because he has the political will to stick to his gun and say, no, my country, the sovereignty of my country must be protected. That's the kind of body language we're expecting from our president. And if Nigerians are disappointed, you should understand, because you were voted in the first place based on the fact that they knew what you did when you were military head of state. And part of your cardinal points of what you promised during campaign was to ensure you tackle insecurity, which was even, we understood or we understand that you inherited this problem. But you were elected to solve this problem. Giving excuses now is not the solution.
Still talking about security, and you know, the phrase of military forces not be overwhelmed by Lai Mohammed. I would like to take your opinion on that. One, do you think they are overwhelmed? Two, if they are, would you lend your voice to the quarters that, you know, call for mercenaries to be deployed to help quell the insurgency? It's not new in the Western region, or in the West African region, rather. We have the Wagner group from Russia and Mali. You had the French troops also in Mali as well, European troops and all of that in different, the Sahel, basically, Sahel region. So will you, if you agree that they are overwhelmed, our security forces, will you subscribe to the notion that they should have support from mercenaries to help quell this?
We must understand that what we have are local problems, even though they have international dimensions. And so the idea of bringing in mercenaries to solve will not solve the problem. And let me make you understand. Until we understand that we need to localize our security apparatus, then we won't solve the problem. You can bring in foreigners, bring in wherever they are, if I may use this word, the Rambo of this world, and also as the nigger of this world, bring them in, they will do nothing. That can only happen in film. In reality is, this terrain, our military, they have the capacity. They have the weapon. Of course, they still need more sophisticated weapons here and there. They still need more. But what I think is playing out is apathy, you know, because not that they are overwhelmed, but because they're not giving the right logistics support, the right the right resources that could boost their morale. Can you imagine when you're battling the enemies or the so-called terrorists, the kind of sophisticated weapons they are using these days? Look at the bombing that happened to the Abuja train, and the kind of attack they were able to stage. That is to tell you they are not just civilians. They are men who have military background. They are well trained. And for them to be able to attack a moving train, that's just to tell you they can do anything. In fact, the most annoying now is they are becoming more emboldened than before. If they could go ahead to attack the airport, you know, that's just to tell you they are sending a signal to the federal government that, hey, we are here. We're a force to reckon with. Hey, you have done everything to ensure that you are taking us off the road, but now we are taking attention to other sites because Nigerians are afraid to travel by road. Now they feel train is the option or going by air, but now those options are being threatened. So I feel the solution to this is for us to bring in the locals, the vigilantes of this world, the Amotekun of this world, and that's another thing. Amotekun was created in the West and other regions. Maybe they have their own name.
Yes.
These are people we need to bring on board to solve the problem. You need to understand the terrain. The terrorists operating in the forest, you can't have all the policemen in the forest. You can't have all the troops or the soldiers in the forest. But the villagers, they live there. The vigilantes, they live there.
There are also concerns about giving them the privilege to bear arms. Talking about the various security networks you've mentioned. You have Ebubeagu in the eastern region, Eastern Security Network, Amotekun here and all. That concerns that should they also be given firearms just like the police or not?
Why
That's
not?
still a debate.
Why not? Look at what is happening in Ukraine. May we not get to that level? Even the president, it has to be is there carrying arms. May we not get to that level? But what we need to do now is to equip our local, security apparatus. They provide what I call native intelligence. They might not actually be carrying out the military work, but they provide that because they live in that community. They know these so-called terrorists, these so-called bandits. They know where they live. They know their family history. They live in those villages, so they know the terrain. Okay, you want to tell me someone who lives in Lagos will know Abuja or Kaduna more than people who live there? No, it's not possible. But because they live in that village, and that is why the federal government needs to localize policing, bring in the community leaders, even if it means you provide the legal framework for this thing to be fashioned into a constitution or to support their activities. Bring in the community leaders, assign them these responsibilities for them to be like patrons or the leaders or supervise this local security apparatus for us to get results. Otherwise, you're just resorting to what we used to have before now, what we had last week. There's a need to bring in these people, the vigilantes, the locals who are ready, even the former servicemen.
Okay, Femi Johnson,
bring them on
for the want of time, we don't have enough time. But in 30 seconds, let's get your reaction with the suspended imam that was later sacked for openly talking about the ills in the society. 30 seconds, sir.
Leaders should be open to criticism. For the fact that you're being criticized doesn't mean that you have to act otherwise. It's an opportunity for you to score a very positive result. And I was hoping that the president would take advantage of that. But I'm not too sure the president is involved in this. Maybe some of his enthusiasts or followers who just felt, okay, this guy is not speaking for us, so let's take him out.
That committee.
You understand? So I don't think that's the right thing to do, because it will even change the situation.
Thank you so much, Femi Johnson.
Thank you very much for your
Always
time.
my pleasure being here.
That was Femi Johnson Ayodele, our in-house analyst, and we will take a short break now. Coming up next, we have the money segment. We'll be right back.